introduce our guest for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for coming here. I might be the wrong person to introduce the distinguished guest we have. This country is Adobe country, and Egypt is Adobe country, but there's much difference. And here we have a distinguished architect that has been, as he says, he's designing for the poor and building for the rich. And he has designed, the author of the book, Architecture for the Poor. And we're going to hear from Mr. Hassan Fathy, a talk about building for the poor. What is the subject of the talk?
Building for
This
the
is
poor.
Adobe, I'm building for the poor.
And this is his assistant, Abdullah. And together we're going to see how they do it in Egypt.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me. I have had all this pleasure all the time I have been in this part of the world. Because, as my friend said, if you were interested in architecture for the poor, I don't want to say the poor. I wanted, in French, the same book was entitled Construire avec le peuple, building with the people. Because there are nothing like poor and rich. We are all men and human beings. But the interest that I had for this kind of architecture, Adobe, it was just because, you see, there, according to the statistics that made by the United Nations, some 20 years ago or 15 years ago, there were something like 800 million amongst the people of the third world who were doomed to a premature death because of the bad conditions of housing, not to mention nutrition and the other needs of life. Naturally, if one speaks about nutrition, I am an architect, I am a nutrition man, so it is my job, it is my profession, that my duty is to talk or to deal with the problem, the architectural problem. But this doesn't exclude the other parts of the problem of this poor. However, now, how can you explain that? I mean, what effect this had on people? If man, the people who are with such, I mean to say, in such a situation, what explains this situation is that the same statistics of the United Nations showed that the annual income per head in this part of the world varies between 25 and 30 pounds a year. This is, how can a man with such an income hire an architect to design his house and hire a contractor to build his house for him and using the industrialized materials? And there is nothing that can explain that such people with such an income are in life unless they were living outside the cash economy. How can we have now building in the past wasn't included, it was integrated into the cash economy. But we have an example. When the Christians were persecuted by the Romans in the 4th century AD, they fled to the desert in Egypt. And they had an oasis and they built in the year 400 BC, they built a whole settlement with about 210 or 20, I don't remember, houses and tombs and mausolea and churches with their own hands. There were no contractors at that time. There was no cement, there was no lorries to carry, and no contact with the rest of the world. So they have had to depend entirely on the potential that is in man and in nature and in environment, what they have had under their feet. And these models are still in life, still existing, and showing a great, I mean to say, solution to the problem for solving the housing for the poor. You know, about this 800 million, I thought they must have reached now the billion. But thanks to God, one of my friends in the United Nations tranquilized me. He said, no, they are only 900 million. So this is the architect who has, we have the architects for the rich or the only for the current practice, but we have to have architects looking after these people. And it is a moral responsibility I said that it isn't at all, because here we have been keen, I mean, we have been very keen on Adobe. The solution that I told you about, this oasis, which I told you, it's called Kharga Oasis. And the place is called Bagawat. It is a sector of the Kharga Oasis in the Western Desert in Egypt. And if they solve the problem, why don't we repeat it today? And we have other examples. In this same oasis, because I've had to build a new oasis there, I mean to say a new city, and in the same oasis. So I've had to study naturally the region and see how these people solve their problem, and from the architectural point of view, because we have to respect, I would like to say that the architect puts his building in two environments. The one, the God-made environment, which is the landscape, the atmosphere, even the cosmic rays, and all that, the fauna, the flora, and men and human beings themselves too, count in this God-made environment. And if the architect doesn't respect the God-made environment, to my mind, it would be a sin against God. And that is why, because in the landscape, you won't find anything which is, inharmonic. Everything, from the blade of grass, to the oak tree, to the mountain, there is a harmony, to the clouds, everything. There is nothing shocking. Because in nature, beauty is defined as it is when we obtain beauty, when the form conciliates the forces that are acting on it. And even when you have clouds, with the aerodynamics, if you apply the laws of aerodynamics, and the clouds going up and down and taken, I don't know, they are always beautiful. But when man puts anything on earth, he has to consider this harmony with the environment. And anything jarring, ought to hurt and man. We have the other environment is the man-made environment, which is the built-up environment. And the architect has to respect this architecture, this environment, on condition that those who preceded us have respected the God-made environment. Because if I don't respect the man-made environment, it will be lack of civility towards those who preceded us. But unfortunately, we have had an abrupt change by industrialization, by the Industrial Revolution. And we have discarded all the man-made material, the hand-handled materials. We have discarded participation of mankind, and we have had to give this to professionals, and it became more or less, and more, it has been cut off from man and from the human scale, from the human expression, from the human reference. Because in the past, we have had, even if we have had, out here and in Europe, there has been all the styles that have been continuing on from antiquity. They are derivatives of the classic, like the Doric and the Greek architecture, the styles of architecture, the Roman, and then the Renaissance, and then the derivatives of the Renaissance, etc. And this, where man used to handle the materials, the natural materials, stone and brick and this and that. Because if you visit Venice, if you visit any part of the old world where you have had, man-made architecture built by man and materials, that normal materials, you will find that there has been something of man, because when man builds, he puts something from himself into the building. I say, when a monk, because I have seen monasteries, and the monks were building their own cells, and I have seen in one of the monasteries in Wadi Natrun, he was proud to show me his cell. It was very simple, like the Adobe we find out here. And I found out that it was radiating spirituality because when he was building, like a sculptor, modeling the mud, And this was man with material exactly like Rodin making his thinker. So unfortunately, they modernized. In the same monastery, I came later on and I found it have put 10 rooms in concrete frame and brick and concrete roofing. And this was shocking, because I thought, I went to the head priest and told him, my father, what have you done with your monks? You have turned them, these are rooms for a third-class hotel, for the servants in a third-class hotel in Cairo, and not the monks. And where is the spirituality? Because when man handles raw material, natural materials like stone. What is he doing when he addresses stone, man? He's removing the superfluous and preserving the essential. So he's spiritualizing the stone and spiritualizing himself. You know the story, I always repeat this story because it's interesting. The man passing by 3 men dressing stone. He asked the first one, what are you doing? He said, I am earning my living. And the second one, he said, I am dressing stone. But when he asked the third, he said, I am building a cathedral. So there are a great difference between the 3. Unfortunately, we are now not anymore building cathedrals. And we are not even dressing stone because we are pouring concrete. Because I am not exclusive. I don't want to exclude concrete. Concrete is a very important material for our buildings, etc., etc. But when we see the effect of the material and the technique of handling the material on the basic nature of man, I have had here, and had by mere chance, a friend of mine, a social anthropologist, and I asked him, I wanted to have how to find the human reference as to judge for whatever action we take, what decision we make, and he gave me this here. He said, if you want to take the basic nature of man, he had the soul, intelligence, ability for action, temperament, physical structure, physiological impulses, the nervous system, which is elastic, simple reflexes, psychological ability, physiological ability for growth, and vocal abilities, the ego, the id, conscience, etc., etc. And this, if we take another, standard of reference to judge what we are doing, we have what we might call nature-culture relationship. And here we have religion, culture, economy, politics, education, recreation, health, and so on. So I took what processes, what decisions and processes that go into the building of a city and see, because we have, let us say, we have the planning and design, which would need the creative work, the creative labor of the architect, town planner. We have the technical work of the engineer, and we have the administrative for the organization of the work, and we have the skilled labor, the semi-skilled labor, and the unskilled labor. So we take each one of these categories, and we see what role they have to play in the design, on the building, in the erection of the city. Because to my mind, the city is not the stones and the asphalt and the post lamps, the lamp posts of the lighting of the street. It is the million acts that go into the building of the city. And we have to have the judge these billion acts that go into the building of the city and refer it to the basic nature of man, if we were to think about mankind. Because to my mind, the best, the tangible proof of the veracity of our, to judge our ideas, our plans, is in the answer to the problem, is it for man or for something else? If it were for man, we can discuss. If it were for something else, politics, economics, technology, I don't know, then you can do whatever you like, but you have neglected man. And as I told you, that when we have integrated, or rather imposed, the modern technology and the industrialized materials, which imposing the cash economy on the people with no cash, we have created 900 million people who are outside the cash economy, and they call them the economical untouchables, the economically untouchables, because these are behind all the troubles we are suffering from politically nowadays. And to my mind, if we can give them, help them technically and by providing them with housing, I think housing is the best element for stability, for social stability, economic stability, political stability. Because the people who are nothing, who are lying on the street, or rather 10 in a room, a small room, in I don't know where, in a basement or whatever it is. So you see, this is to my mind, one of the solutions to the problem, the political problem, and of the disturbance that we are having nowadays. I wish if all the youth, instead of kicking a football and running behind it, to build, because building is a great, it's like sculpture. We have children that go to the beach and build castles of sand on the beach. And building is, to my mind, like sculpture. It is an art. And so we are not using this human potential, and we are wasting the energy of man in I don't know, running behind the ball, you know, and playing football and having millions of people watching. So this, I wish, I wish if we built, I say that the country, the organization that will take care of the 900 million will win the world by love and construction instead of hatred and destruction that is ruling the world nowadays. Because you will give man, why he's revolted? Because he has nothing to fear, to lose, but if he would have his home. And apart from that, all what they have been from the social psychology point of view, and from all the studies that are made for education and this and that, and the standard of life, and when you take the children, our children, and when they are treated, I mean, I don't know how. I say the house where children cannot play hide and seek is not a house. We have to provide them. Yes, you are quite right, my dear. So you see, we must reintroduce two things to or three things, main things into our architecture and town planning. We have to reintroduce the human reference, and we have to reintroduce aesthetics and harmonics and musicality in our cities and in our buildings, because to my mind, when the architect takes care of his client in designing his house, and when he comes in, he will see this, and then I must give him something beautiful out here, and then he turns and so on. It is as if the architect were bowing down to the owner, I mean, as he's passing by in reverence, like the ballet, like the minuetto, or I don't know, the gavotte. So in the street too, when they put a beautiful building, and when I turn here, you have a surprise, and like we have in the cities, well-known cities like in Italy. I mean, we have the Verona, and you have Venice, you have even the smallest village, you will find works of masters of art. So here, I say that the building would be bowing also to the people. But every ugly building is insulting every gentleman passing in front of it, because it's saying, this is your worth, mister. So we have to reintroduce aesthetics and beauty. And now I call, when we have, how can we, with the T-square architecture, I call it, our modern architecture, with nothing that comes out, all straight lines with the T-square and so on the drawing board. What doesn't come out from the drawing board has no chance of being built. And we have discarded the craftsmen. We have discarded the people that have been dressing stone and this and that. You know, in reinforced concrete, as I thought, I'm not exclusive. I respect reinforced concrete, but I would like to have its effect on man. You have, instead of the man dressing the stone and spiritualizing himself, we have a carpenter nailing boards, nothing but nailing boards, pack, 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 pack. And an iron blacksmith bending rods, and a man pouring concrete. And where is this contact, where is this dialogue between man and nature and material and this and that? Spiritualize, what can we spiritualize but a man bending rods? Or rather nailing boards. So you see, this is the effect, the impact of the decision or the method on the basic nature of man that we have been describing. You see, but there is something which we have to recognize. We have to have change, because change is the basic nature of life. But change is amorphous, is neutral. If it weren't for the better, it would be for the worse. So we have to direct change to the better. And the moment came some 150 years ago, when the Industrial Revolution arrived, we have had to change. But unfortunately, the new materials changed completely this dialogue between man and nature, between man and materials, because and it is very difficult to resist facility, because I say, as we said, the city is the billion, or rather the million acts that are going to build into making. If I give a people, a community, a city overnight, this would be the worst thing you can give them, because they will have nothing. But certainly, nobody would ever refuse to have a city overnight. But they never think about the quality of human beings and this nature and nature culture and this and that and culture, etc., etc. These are really problems that we have to pose, and we have to consider, to reintroduce, and to go back on our decisions and try to do whatever we can do. Here I was thrilled by man here in this part of the world dealing with Adobe, with Earth, Mother Earth. And what did he do? This is the material that they had, and they managed. I say that, this Adobe solves the problem of these economically untouchables, because everybody can quarry his earth from under his feet, and he can build, and he can model, he can beautify. Man usually beautifies everything that he does with his own hands, and we have examples. We have this Adobe has been used universally in certain parts of the world where they have been discarded from the centers of rule, and we have in Iran, in the central Iran, in Yazd and Kerman and this part of the world. I have visited these parts of the world, and I was thrilled by the technique they acquired and the ability they have had to build and solve the problem in using Adobe. But Adobe, like out here, is not simply, it doesn't solve the problem totally, because I have been told that here, man had solved the problem of walls, but he was defeated by the problem of the roofing, because the roofing needs materials that take tension and bending and shearing forces, so like wood, like steel, which are to be bought in cash. But man from antiquity solved this problem by giving the strength to his roof, to the roofing, not by the resistance of the material, but by the geometrical form. And if you have the catenary, curve of a catenary, like if you have here a chain and hold it from its two ends, it will take this parabolic form, and it will be, every link would be pulling on the other. It was working entirely, 100% in tension. If you reverse it upwards, it will be working 100% in compression. Mud brick cannot take tension, but it takes compression. And they solved the problem by giving vaults, bearing vaults and domes that are exposed uniquely to the compressive stresses. So this was the solution. But more than that, they have solved the problem by building the vault, because we know if you have a vault, you have to have, centerings. And it would be very expensive. It would beat the poor. But they managed to build the vault freehand in space like that, with no centering, with nothing. By building the bricks end to end on inclined planes, the voussoirs, or rather the rings, inclined off the vertical towards an end wall where by this inclination, the brick that is in the most precarious position could be stuck. And we have calculated the sliding stresses so as not to slide, and we have found that at the most precarious position, the stress of the sliding stress of the brick was 0.013 kilograms per square centimeter. That means to say the brick would stay in the position until the ring is completed, inclined. And once intercalated, you can build on to kilometers of roofing. So the solution is helped. This would introduce the third dimension to our architecture. Here in New Mexico and in this part of the world, using Adobe, you have developed a style which reminds me of the Greek style, with the beams and the columns only in wood, which is very sweet and very nice. But I have heard that timber is becoming scarce, and that now, the timber for the roofing of one of the humble houses would cost something like $6,000. And in 30 years to come, and in 10 years to come, it will cost $30,000. And we have to foresee for the future and try and find, and this is what we can do, and that is what I have come here to do. I came here to be acquainted with what you have done with the Adobe, and to see if we can communicate our experience in solving this problem of roofing and vaulting, etc. But vaulting and using the vault and dome for roofing would introduce the third dimension in our design. And the architects, when we plan, usually they take the plan on 2 dimensions and then put their partitioning and clap the roof on top and finito. But if you have the, what do you call it, the vaulting, if you increase your span, you would raise you increase your height, the rise of the vault on the dome. So you have to articulate your internal space, and this is a long story, but I must say that I mean, in this example in Bhagavat, as I told you, from the 4th century AD, these people have devised systems by, I mean to say, if they were limited, so are not to raise the height beyond their I mean, possibility of the material, they articulated in internal space, and they have had latest combinations between vault and dome and arch and vault, etc., etc. Suppose now we wanted to roof this big area here with what do you call it, with vaulted roofing. We have to subdivide this area, either to have columns in the middle and have arches, and then you can have 2 vaults, or you have, I mean to say, buttresses here and have arches here and then vaults across, or rather you have to subdivide it in 3 domes in the middle, or you have projections. There are a heap of solutions which would make the intelligence of the architect to work out and to solve the problem. Here now we have all the lines with this roofing, the vaulted roofing, is always going up and down from the ground up to the ceiling, down to the ground again, etc., working. And as we said, the beauty comes out when the form conciliates the forces that have been acting on it. Here the form is compulsory, has to conciliate the forces, because if it doesn't, it will collapse. So this, we don't need even any decoration for such architecture. I don't want to take too much, and I would like to show you, and I would like to say before showing you the slides that I'm going to show you, that architecture is an art which is the most important part of the, what do you call it, the culture. And culture, the best definition for culture to my mind, is that it is the outcome of the interaction between the intelligence of man and his environment in satisfying his needs both spiritual and physical. And we have the tangible proof of the veracity of this definition in plastic arts, like painting, for instance. You would have the Swiss, you would not paint camels or no palm trees because they haven't. And an Arab wouldn't have a Swiss chalet because he would like to have, I mean to say, to sleep on the roof, where you have 20 degrees centigrade difference between day and night to live in the coolness. So here now in this, the importance of architecture and the forms that the different people produced, reacting with the environment, if they were building for heat, for warming, or for cooling. All my work have been in the hot arid zones where I have been designing for cooling. But here you have for heating. And I have seen, but we can, what serves for heating can serve the form that suits heating, can serve cooling. And we shall see that, because the Adobe is a very bad conductor of heat. But when it gains heat, it gives it slowly. So if you can, as you are doing out here, with the orientation of your building towards the sun, and you have what you call this passive energy and so on, we can, I mean to say, save a lot of the heat, of the energy that we have for heating. But with the vaulting, I say that the vault can suit this kind of thing, because, as we said, the vault is built in inclined rings against the end wall. The other end can be open. So we can put glass on it and orientate it toward the sun, and you can solve the problem instead of doing anything artificially or especially or whatever it is. However, but again, from the aesthetic point of view, every community, every race have, reacting with their environment, created their own style of architecture. I say that and to say it is like when the man goes to the psychiatrist to have a psychoanalysis, he makes him to draw, scribble down on paper, scribbling, and then he analyzes his problem. So the people too, by choosing certain lines, you have the Chinese having this line coming down. You see it in the pagodas, and you find it in the buildings, and the hats, and everywhere, and so on. So you see, it is this forms that the people, the different communities have produced. they come from, to my mind, from the subconscious of the community. But when the modern architect comes, the forms that he would be freed from this. He's substituting this with what? The outcome of the conscious mind of the student, the graduate of a university with 5 years, while the other fellow, he has got 2,500, 5,000 years of, of tradition. Tradition, to my mind, is like a glass of water, where every generation has put a cell of a liquid and have some other salt to put, or rather, if you put another salt, we shall have a paste and we shall not have a crystal. And this is what the most of our modern architecture, to my mind, is like pastry, paste. Because there is no crystallization of, no correspondence and no reference to man or to his tradition or to this and that. Architecture is a communal art because we put the building in the city to be seen by everybody, to be made by everybody. The bad painting would be in by being facing the wall in the studio of the bad, painter. But architecture and bad music will never be have the chance to be played in the concert hall. But architecture, it forces itself on everybody. And the architect, to my mind, is like a dictator. When he puts a door here, he forces people to pass through. And when he puts whatever it is, and I say always, it is a pity, because ugliness doesn't hurt the eye like dissonance hurts the ear, so that you jump when you hear a dissonance. And I wish if the eye would come out when you see something ugly and have tears and become red and so on, so that we impose beauty on architecture, on whatever we do with our cities. And what I will be showing you now is what the outcome of this, the interaction between the intelligence of the Nubians in Egypt and their environment and their techniques and the psychoanalysis of the Nubian, how they have handled the Adobe, what architecture they produced, and then we can see, compare this with what you have. You have it in mind, naturally. I'm sorry because I'm a newcomer and I wish you had the slides, but this will come later on when I give lectures in another part of the world. I will show what the Mexicans have produced as the Adobe architecture and the analysis, the psychoanalysis, which I'll give to a psychiatrist to analyze our friends out here. And we shall see what, this our friend Rudovsky, Professor Rudovsky, who wrote this beautiful book, Architecture Without Architects. I met him last year, I don't know when, and in New York, and I told him, I like your book, because when I see so much of what we call architecture with architect, and I see the architecture without architect, I don't know which is which. Because the architecture with architect, we have, first of all, we have, as we said, excluded completely the aesthetic factor, and as architecture, according to the dictionary, to the definition of the dictionary, it is the art of building. So it is art and technique. Art is a gift by God. If you don't have it, you will never have it, mister. But the technique we can learn in schools, 5 years, university. But now architecture has become engineering, and the aesthetic factor has been lost, and the human factor is lost. I have put once La Cité Tour, the city tower cities of Corbusier, like this, the high rise that you have out here, and they put man, he was not bigger than an ant. So where is man in this, and how man would feel with space in nature? Man, as God has created him, he was on the ground, on the surface of Mother Earth, surrounded by trees, by wood, by flowers, by this and that, and animals, and that is why we keep animals, pets in our houses, cats and dogs, and I don't know. I had even, when I was young, a donkey even. And I made him to wear the trousers of my father. And when he grew up and he started praying, they sent him to the farm, and I was so sad. Because we are built, we are created. The design concept is not to be surrounded by this. And they have found out that the best material you can surround with scientifically, with regard to the radiations coming from the cosmos, is wood. And the worst is reinforced concrete, because it stops the radiations coming from the cosmic rays or the telluric rays. We have been to Taos, and they showed me a hole and said that this hole you have earth. If you touch it, if you feel you will get cured. Like in Lourdes, where we are cut off from this, because we are part of the universe. And if we integrate ourselves, if we vibrate in unison with the universe, which have all the elements of the universe would come and help us. It is, I say, like if my finger is a part of the body, if I cut my finger, all the body will come and heal it. But if I cut off myself from Mother Earth, from the cosmos, from the universe, I will have my will. Whatever you want, man, you will have. But you won't have anything more. Nothing could come to help you. So now I think that I don't want to take too much of your time, and I would like to start by showing you the architecture without architects and architecture with architects, and to say which is which. And could we have, we shall start by Nubia. Shall I take this one?
It's okay.
Oh, it's leave it. So shall we have, please, the slides now? Have you put Nubia? Good. Yes. You see, the Nubian, this is a Nubian village, which is unfortunately submerged now under the water when they have had the high dam. And they have used the vaulted roofs, so that they found that the best solution to eliminate the lateral thrust of the vault is to have the room one next to the other, and thus the thrust would be annulating one another and solving the problem, having courtyards. And these are the plans of a Nubian village which is underwater now. Next, please. And this would be the view, and they would building their houses on the river near the water. Next, please. And now they decorated, because they are very simple, as you have seen in plan. The way they, what do you call it, the vaults, they are the vaults are hidden, but they have put the interest in the doorway, because the door is invested with magic for these people, and all these elements are symbolic to them. Next, please.
1 second, Hassan made
I was trying to show us the size,
yes.
because it's too big. Never mind. The doorway is the most important. Next, please. And this here, the interior, this is Adobe, black earth, and they paint it white with whitewash. They have this whitewash from the mountain, and the colors, they have the chromes from the mountain too. They have the oxides of iron, and I don't know what. And they decorate with whatever they had, and this is the work of the girls. They are the girls who decorate the houses. And you see, it is the solution, which is entirely different from the solution of the Adobe out here. Next, please. And here, you see, every house is different. It's no repetition of two houses, even if they work for the same family. And nothing like we do. We design one house and put 3 zeros to its right and becomes 1,000. I say that the house here is the portrait of the owner. And the architect who repeats the house is like a painter who doesn't know how to paint except one portrait. And if Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z goes, he will have the same portrait. So this is what you can have, a man decorating, introducing, like you have out here in the Indian paintings and designs. And man, when he is not normal, we are all the same. Next, please. And these are the decorations, what they have, the palm tree and the birds and the geometric forms and so on. And these are plates which they stick on the wall to decorate. Naturally, this would find from some of the plates come from the wagon lit, and some would come from the hotels and so on. Next, please. And this is decoration, hand decoration, I mean, in plaster, in colored plaster, and decorating but together with always with the plates that are there. Next, please. You see, they are all different. And this here, what you have here, you have it in Africa, because, you know, these are ears and wings and horns of animals. Because if you take India, for instance, plant life is predominant. That's why you have the Hindu temple is almost like a cactus. It's like. But in Africa, they have the animal life is predominant. And that's why they have, even in, I have seen in Kano, in Nigeria, the doorway is almost like an anthropomorphical mask with the face of a man and an animal with the horns and ears of the animals. And they have it here for the symbol. Next, please. Again, you see, these are the different houses that you can see what they have done with Adobe. And the problem they posed for themselves is to hide the vault, not to show it, and to have the decoration, because the repetition of the vaults will not be interesting. But in Bhagavat, they didn't. They would have shown the vaults and dome and combinations, etc., etc. Next, please. You see, using this cluster work and the plates and these horns and ears of animals. Next, please. There is an infinitude of variety of variations on the same theme. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. You see, the Baroque or L'Art Nouveau, which died in the hands of the architect, has been, I'm going to say, enlivened with the hands of the Nubian mason, craftsman. Next, please. This is a small dome. I thought it was a mausoleum for a cat, or but I found out that it was when this region has been flooded 3 times. When we have built the Aswan Dam, first time, it flooded all the villages. And then they built new villages above the stream, higher than the stream in the valley. And then when the second elevation of the Aswan Dam flooded again the whole region, and they built these buildings that you are seeing in 1 year, in 1934. And unfortunately, all this architecture has been drowned now, has been submerged when we have had this high dam. And this at the second elevation of the Aswan Dam, the people, they had a mausoleum for a saint, and it was submerged, and they couldn't build it, they haven't had the money, so we have this votive mausoleum, I mean, to represent the representative, which is very touching, as a matter of fact, to have this kind of thing, to stand for the original mausoleum for the saint that they had. Next, please. This is very interesting here. You see, this is the entrance doorway to the palace of Fathy from the 3rd dynasty. That means to say 5,000 years from now. And this is the house of Ahmed Abdin, a man nurse living in Nubia in the 20th century. And the similarity is striking. These holes for the ventilation here, like you see it here, and the cornice here, and the dentils and the arrangement. You see, this is because, as we said, the doorway is always invested with magic and superstition. And the superstition survives after the religion is gone. But how could this image be kept in the memory of the people of Nubia? Because the image couldn't be repeated unless if it were by vision. That means to say that there has been a continuous culture going on for 5,000 years, which has been submerged by the high dam. Next, please. Which is a tragedy to my mind. And this is here you have like this forehead and these fingers that are like down here. Next, please. Here you have the same, and the fingers like the steps. The form is coming out from, because as we said, coming out from the environment. Even for man and his building, etc., etc. I say that the building, the house, is like the shell of the snail where the soft living part secretes calcium carbonates and makes the shell crystallizing in this form. After the dead part has been it has taken shape, it returns on the living part which created it and gives it form. So the house gives form to the building, and the building to man. Next, please. These are the vaults in one of the rooms in one of the villages in Adobe, and this is a nuptial room. They have the bed down here, because the girl, before she gets married, she puts all her feelings for her future sentimental life in art by making these straw baskets like you find out here too from the Indian, and this they hang on, and the bridegroom brings silk which would be hanging on the wall and decorating the nuptial room. This silk material is not to be used by his wife, but for her girl, her first girl, when she gets married, anticipating the procreation, the sentimental life of the child. I mean, it's a continuity of life in what man does with his own hands. If you replace this with a concrete room, with a bed in the middle where you knock your knees every moment you move about, you can compare and you can imagine what we are losing as culture. Next, please. This is what the architecture with architect. And that's where I said for Mr. Rudovsky, is this the architecture with architects or without? I don't know. Because here, the Nubians, these are what we have replaced the buildings, the houses that you have seen. The most beautiful architecture, I call this, was the miracle of the 20th century. And when we came in, we have had these houses, which are all the same. Designed one house and repeated 34,000 times. And you know that the Nubians, they like drinking. And when the poor man, he comes at night, a little drunk, he counts, because all the rules are, and when he goes to the 10th or the 20th house, he gets mixed up, and he comes from the very beginning and counts again and goes to and fro until he would find his house. The house should be the image of the owner. I say that there are no two men alike. Even if they were twins, they will differ in the dream, and architecture comes out of the dream. And if the architect has to build for the peasant, he has to dream for the peasant, but not to treat him as if he were something that can be repeated, statistically, or like pebbles, or I don't know how you treat people. I say that this has ruined the children, the character. I mean, the heat is tremendous and impossible. I say that we have to have, the architect should live in any house, the humblest house he designs for the peasant, for the poor. He has to live with his children, with his family, at least 1 year. Next, please. Again, you see, again, the same thing, you know, pam, 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 pam. It is, you know, Goethe said architecture is frozen music. And we have seen it in the Nubian architecture. It was frozen music. But here, this is not frozen music. This is a broken record. Because it is tick-em, 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 repetition with nothing. Next, please. Again, we have the architecture with architects. I wonder what kind of architects. Never mind. You know, in China, they have the rules of the Feng Shui for the rules for putting buildings in the landscape, and they have found that they were murdering the missionaries in some remote villages in China, and which horrified everybody. And when we investigated the matter, they found that it wasn't at all for any religious reasons, but it was because the missionaries have put churches with wrong angle of the pitch of the church and covered it with corrugated iron, and the campanile was not fitting in the landscape. And so they thought that this was a sin against God. I think that if we have applied this Feng Shui, we shall have, and I'm afraid I'm an architect because I'm insulting the architects, we shall have many architects. Unfortunately, we would have been murdered. Next, please. these are now, we have come to the architecture with architect, but trying to respect the form that using the three-dimensional system, using the vault and dome, and letting the vault and the dome to show in the design, not to hide like in the Nubian. This in the village of Gorna, this was the mosque of the village of Gorna, and this was, the minaret was, I mean to say, inspired by the minaret on the traditional form, and the mosque here with domes at top of here, etc., etc. Next, please. And this was how it looks like. I mean to say the drawing and the actual. Next, please. Again here, the mosque. Next, please. Oh, this is all in Adobe, but the dome is in red bricks because it's a 6.5 meters span. Next, please. And from every angle, you have I mean to say, how it looks like in nature. Next, please. It is like sculpture, because you have here these are Byzantine domes and the Sassanid dome in combination, and so on. Next, please. And these are buildings. These are the top of the mosque, and this is the market, the shopping center here, with vaults and domes in front, and with ventilation holes on top, etc., etc. Next, please. And this, the form that would come and how it, if it were to be jarring or fitting into the landscape, I mean the hill, which is very similar to the landscape out here in many parts of this country, but here I must confess that the nature has sculptured the mountains in the most fantastic manner. I'm thrilled. I can't tell you how much I am fascinated by the form of the erosion. I don't know how it did happen. It's not the wind. I cannot say it is rain nor wind. This was the marketplace, and you see in our marketplaces they have just a railing, and you have the people showing off, exhibiting their goods and wares on the ground in the sun, and the animals too. And these were alveoles, vaults opening opposite to what you have here. We have to open it, I mean to say, to have the breeze, the cool. And they are opening to the south, but open on the north to us to have ventilation by suction, not by compression, because it will not work. And to have, for the goods would be, I mean, exhibited there. And this was for the cone, because the cone, they put it on the ground, you know, on mats, and they said it cannot be exhibited under. And the animals, this is the tree. I have planted trees in rows, 6.5 meters between one tree and the other, and one row and the other, with mangers and water troughs for the small animals, the big animals, to shade the animals too, because the air temperature rises to 60 and 70 degrees centigrade, and we have to respect the animals too. Next, please. This was the school in the setting, because this ought to have been built entirely, but fortunately this has been flooded again, and I don't know, because they flooded this village 3 times, because it wasn't a village for normal peasants. It was to remove the people living on the antiquity zone who has ancient tombs under their houses. And they were, I mean to say, each house, I have, I mean to say, a survey which shows that each house has 1, 2, and 3 tombs, ancient tombs. And when the man gets need of money, he just goes down below the dining room and gets something and sells it to the tourists, and he makes what he wants as money. And the government now has decided to remove them from the antiquity zone, because this has been ruining everything. You know, we have had an archaeologist, a French archaeologist. Before the war, he found a tomb which was filled from ground to top by papyrus. But he had to block it, because the war was on, and he had to leave it till the war ended. After the war, he received, I mean to say, paper with from the, I think it was Metropolitan Museum, and the French director in Paris sent this paper to this archaeologist and told him, this comes from the tomb that you have found, the papyri. And he went because he built a wall and blocked it. He found it and sealed it. And he went and he found that it was it was blocked and sealed. And he wrote back, no, it cannot be because the tomb is sealed. And then another, publication, he had to open the tomb. He found it empty, and he found only one, and they had two holes, tunnels leading, the one to the house of so and so, and the other tunnel to the house of the other fellow. So this is why they have had to build new Gorna to remove these people from the antiquity zone. So they were opposed to the transfer, in spite of all what we have been trying to do to give them aesthetics and crafts and to solve their problems of earning their living, to compensate for stopping their tomb. The antiquities. The commerce of antiquities. It was a tragedy. No, never mind. It will be restored, and this will become part of a touristic hotel, and to be the dining room, because they see if the people don't want, let us help for the rest of the world. Like out here, we have to not to think of ourselves only, but to have to solve the problem for the rest of the poor of this 900 million. Next, please. And this was the entrance of the school. I have been inspired by a school I have seen in Anatolia. I entered the school in Bursa, in Anatolia, and I found in the garden where the most beautiful roses I'd ever seen in my life to greet the children coming into the school. So I thought I would have something similar. But I have had this copy conform of the gardens of the palace of Akhenaten, where you have had the water and flowers, and this ought to have 8 palm trees like the candles in a birthday cake, and you would see the water underneath. Imagine if this had the palm trees, would have been marvelous. But we have been working in opposition to everybody, to the bureaucracy, to the people, to everybody, but still we didn't say, or rather be discouraged, and we have been trying to give man the best we can give him as to the human reference, to beauty, to whatever it is, as if it were the school for my own child. Next, please. And this was the gallery for the school, the classrooms. Next, please. With flowers to greet the boys when they come out from the classroom. This is another project, was in Kharga Oasis, where we have had, um, um, another project, but it was not for tomb robbers, it was for peasants, but next, please. It was stopped. You see, this was the shopping, the back of the shopping. We have had an overhang outside to shade from the sun, and it has double roof where you have the claustra, is the wall, is the shop, and on top open with, to have cross ventilation on top. And believe me, the lighting inside and the heat, the temperature is very cool in the hottest months of the year. I have a friend who told me he went in July, and he found that he was shivering in the basement, because we have made a basement for the storage of the food stuff, because we don't have electricity, and we have had to depend on the passive energy by the wind, and using the laws of the aerodynamics. You know, the basement, not here. On opposite to this, they were the stores in the basement, and we have had wind catches and wind escapes, blowing in the wind and sucking it out. Air temperature above was 1.5 meters per second. In the basement, it was 2 meters, 0.5 meter, 2.5 meters per second. That means, and so if this wind catches, we could put wetted material like straw or animal charcoal. You can reduce the temperature enormously, and you have this thrilling, the shivering that my friend had, because he was sweating, and when he went down with the draft, he was cool. I have made an experiment once of 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, just with 2 baffles which were wetted, and put thermometers on both sides and worked it by the vacuum cleaner. And I had the thermometer. I thought we shall have ice, because the thermometer went to 2 degrees centigrade in no time, immediately, by having just cooling by evaporation and having the conducting this is using the wind not only for ventilation and this and that, but also for air cooling. And I wonder if we can use the same principle for air heating. But never mind now. Next, please. This was the doorway for the theater, and I've had here a platform so as to have performances in the village. I wanted the people to play. We have enough of serious people. I would like every square in the village or in the city that we build in modern cities to be a setting for a theatrical, like we have the square where you have the balcony of Giulietta and have the people to play, and then you walk on and you find I don't know, the setting for Otello or whatever it is of the modern artists. I don't remember now the playwriters. So next, please. And we are trying, this is all in Adobe. And this is the interior of the theater. And the setting here was built in. I have had a visit of the director of the Royal Theatre of Amsterdam. He told me, Monsieur, you can play in this theater all the plays of Shakespeare, because we have had, it was built in because it's not showing, because it is on the wall, you see the setting. Next, please. And this was a performance with camels and the people. We see when we have two ministers here and we're playing all together, because we have enough of serious life. We have been too much grim, and we want to relax a little. Next, please. If you have, and this the people start fencing, you know, at times we have had a play, but it wasn't a play which was written by, artificially. We have taken all the songs and the dances and whatever they do, the habits of the peasants, and arrangement in a certain sequence to give a sense as a play. And once the Spanish ambassador told me, Monsieur, I was thrilled, more thrilled by the play I have seen than Garcia Lorca's Noce du Sang, the wedding of blood, I don't know, of Garcia Lorca. And I told him, Your Excellency, it is because every gest and every movement you have seen and every song, every word has at least 500 years of tradition or 1,000 years of tradition. Because you will find this stuff fencing in the tombs of Luxor, which go back to the 19th dynasty. So there is nothing new, but only to have arranged that makes feeling it was fantastic. And once the government sent the troop, the national troop of actors, and the people hooted them, and the children went on the stage and played themselves. Next, please. This is how we can reproduce culture. And this is to show you what we can do with Adobe. This is the interior of a courtyard in one of these houses in Adobe, and the flower matching the thing and so on. And this is modeling. Next, please. Again, in the same courtyard here, and I have seen that they have putting the water jars under vaults in the open so as to cool down. So I thought, why don't we have it here and have a cluster to have a screen and to stop the dust and use it, in the house, and the excess of water, the water seeping down could come and irrigate the flowers down here. Next, please. This was an interior. And you see, from the aesthetic point of view, I have been troubled because I found only that this matting was the only thing that matched, because the rest were the Bedouin, but they don't match. This comes from the pharaonic tombs. And I found that this was to match the best, because we have to have these harmonics in mind, even in interior decoration, in design, in color, in everything. Next, please. This is a wash stand here, a wash basin here, and an arrangement. Can we lift it, because this is a pity, because you see this was inspired by my violin master, because I used to play the violin, and my master told me, Monsieur, you cannot treat an instrument outside your body before you know how to treat your own body. And he was giving me lessons how to relax for 1 week, because he said if there's one muscle cramped in the leg or in the waist or whatever it is, you cannot make a trill, cannot do this and that. And if you hold the bow hard or stiff, it will not produce the same sound. And this had made me to think that if I sat down and had because the women wash the laundry sitting on these bowls, I mean to say troughs, basins. And I was blending. If you bend too much, you would have your back strained and your muscles will not be worked properly. And if you lean backwards, you'll be cramped. So until I got to the very relaxed situation and stopped there and asked my assistant to come with the plumb line and making the measurements, and we designed this. Because here you can exert the greatest power without much strain. Next, please. These are the staircases we're using the Adobe Claustra work and so on. Only the stairs we have used stone. Next, please. And this was the marketplace. And this was the cafe next doors. And this was the entrance from the outside. Next, please. This become what you have seen. Had a specific technique. I want to say this to our colleagues out here, the professionals, because this is the vault that is built end to end, the vault built end to end, and with no centering, leaning against the vertical. But if I wanted to have, this opening, I wanted to have this to put something on top like a dome or a wall, and have an opening here. We have what we call in French arc doubleau, a notch, double, to say rings, and use this vault as a centering, and put this. Then you can put a wall on top. Next, please. This is the staircase the vaults carrying staircases. I am afraid. Here. Oh, sorry. This, if you wanted to have a flat roof, instead of having too much filling, they put two side vaults, small side vaults. They take up instead of the filling, and you can have your roof flat, and you can have a flat roof on top, another floor. And this would help for, heat insulation. And next, please. And this is a room I have had an experience. We know the dome is much stronger than the vault, because you have any brick in the vault, you would have working as an arch, and in all the directions, in the cross directions, and even in every direction, it is working as an arch. So this, but the vault in Nubia, we have had the largest. The normal that they do is 3 meters span. But I have done this in one of my projects, and it was on the edge of the desert. And you know, when you have the cultivation after the sunset, the desert gets cooler because there is no, clouds or humidity and to reflect back the radiations, and is radiated out into the stratosphere. But on the agricultural land, you have humidity, and most of it is reflected back. If you are on the edge of the desert, the wind blowing, the saturated wind, air that is above the cultivation, and you have the dew point, reached easily, and you have condensation, and you have water you can drink. If you have, once I have had my car outside just near the cultivation, and it was dripping with water. I said, we can drink out of the air. So it wetted the vaults, and they wobbled, because I didn't use these stabilizers. Because now we have the two sciences that we have to have recourse to. I say to play with mud brick, it needs a trio. The soil mechanics specialist, who knows all about the qualities of the earth, the physical, the chemical, and so on, and mechanical. And to have the structural engineer who is specialized in shell structures, so as to calculate the stresses and strains, and forces that you have in the shell structures. And the architect who can command the other two. I say always that the soil mechanics engineer is the cello in the trio, because the earth is vibrating deeply, very like the cello. And the violin, highly strung, would be the structural engineer, specialized in shell structure, highly strung, and the pianist would be the architect. So we have to have the trio, and not a duo or a solo, especially if the people or the community doesn't have experience and tradition. Out here, I have found that you have had great experience in handling or making your Adobe. because there has been a tradition, and I have found out that the engineers and architects have been taking care of this material scientifically, because we have to subject science and technology to the economy of the poor. And here it has been done, but unfortunately, I found out that Adobe, or rather, and soil mechanics is not taught, doesn't get into the university curricula for mud brick for Adobe. It is included only for calculating the foundations. Because before we used to have Rankine formula, it was under no, but nowadays we have the soil mechanics. And I say that nature itself, which proposed the material to man, when he saw that after harvest, after you have the straw mixed with earth, makes big lumps of earth with not cracking. So he made his mud brick, but this was by observation of man and reacting to his environment, etc., etc. But now we have to subject these phenomena, to the modern science, because the tradition is being lost in most of the communities and the countries by the introduction of the industrialized materials, and the technique is being lost. And we have now, I know of only the people who in the places where they have the vaulted roofs are used, where are in Iran, in Yazdan, Kerman, in central Iran, and in Nubia, in Egypt. And they have the groin vault in Tunisia, but the same principle but differently. But the most simple is this vault structure. So here we have had to design, if I have my room, the dome has to sit on a square, which is not a nice space to feel. I have to have it rectangular. So if I have here, a smaller, if I reduce the span of the vault, it can resist the humidity even, because the stresses will not be so big. And here, if I add, if this were to be 3 meters, I have this two and a half. I have 25 centimeters here, 25 centimeters here. That would increase the width of my buttresses to instead of 50 centimeters to be 75 centimeters. So I have been strengthening the structure by the lateral thrusts and by reducing the span. And so on. This is how they look like, as I've been showing out here. I will show you afterwards what we have been hanging on the wall as to design that can come out, because we have to know the drawing and how it looks like in nature. Like Robert Schumann, the musician, he said that the musician is when he sees the notes, he hears the music. And when he hears the music, he sees the notes. But I say that the architect, when he sees the drawing, he would see the building. And when he sees the building, he sees it in drawing. But he has to know more of that. He has to know how it is built too. So here now we can have this is what the drawings would look like and how they would look like in buildings. We shall see, because the Nubians have been hiding, and they were not using the third dimension sculpturally, because they were having the rooms vaulted one next to the other. But in Bhagavat, as I told you, for the 4th century AD, they were manipulating the space in the third dimension. Next, please. And these are the same room that you have seen as combinations in an L shape. And here you have the central part and the E1. We call this E1, and the bed would be put in here, and the wardrobe, and this would be empty. Because, if you put the bed in the middle of the room, and it is a small room, as I said, even all the hotels, one knocks his knees always against the beds that are put in the middle of the room. And these are combinations of what we can do with this kind of architecture, in drawing. Next, please. And this is what it comes out when we have, more complicated. We have a lobby out here, and with arches and vaults, like we were saying, and here a dome on squinches and so on, and a vault over there. And here was manipulating space, as we said. We have a garage here at ground level, and this is 1.5, let us say, meters above ground level, and you can have here a bedroom on top. This would be opening on the other side, so that you can have a boudoir here and a higher part, and which would be looking nice and articulating space and helping in beautifying the space and the utility of the house and the rooms, this space of the rooms. Next, please. And this, what it would like here is the garage, and this is the side vault, and here, there, and this it would be carrying the stairs, and you have the bedroom, and here, and this would be the boudoir, and with an opening there. If you wanted to heat up, you can open this and have the sun to come here or whether to come there. I mean, this would be, it will not deny the vault and the dome are I mean to say, structural elements like the beam and the column, and you can manipulate them and do with them whatever you like. Next, please. This is the plan of this house that you have seen. These are the buttresses here with arches and vaults. And then in the bedroom here, I mean the living room, and the dome out here, etc., etc. But this is the kind, and this is the bedroom, as I said, and the boudoir, and the garage is underneath. Next, please. That's all? Thank you very much.
Questions, Hassan?
Yes. Oh, thank you. You see, we have seen here, I mean, the architecture was architect, and architecture without architect, and architecture with architect, as it should be, and architecture with architect, and how it should not be. And I think that now, this what we have done and what we have seen, but in presence and by the architect, with the architect, handling this kind of new structure, and we are introducing this, and we are having a model in the Dar al-Islam in ABQ. And we are using the vaults and domes, and I wonder, because we have the Indian colleagues that were very much interested in this technique, and the Mexican architects and the architects, American architects. It is a field which would open a new vista for design and manipulating space and modeling in space. And I would love that one day we find that you will have produced what you have seen. In Gorna, it was the work of one man handling this material, and what I would like to see when it will be handled with the artists that you are having out here. Especially, I have been asked the most interesting and intelligent questions from the people down here, asking me about how they can combine this and that, and to do this and that, showing that a very deep, I mean to say, going very deeply into the essence of the technique and of the method of roofing and the architectural design and so on. I don't want to take too much time of yours, but I would like to have you there. Any questions, I would be glad to answer and to tell you all what we can find. Yes, please. You are welcome. It is, you see, we are, I must say that I would like to leave you a copy of this memorandum which I have had for an Institute for Appropriate Technology. This appropriate technology, appropriate to what? Appropriate to the economy of the poor, appropriate to the environment, appropriate to the culture of any part of the world. And you are welcome. It is, I have asked the people responsible for this project that I said I mean to say, agree to come and on condition that we have this to be part of the International Institute for Appropriate Technology. Because this we have to I mean to say, disseminate the information about how the poor can handle Adobe from ground to wall to roof, everything, and house. You know, two masons can roof a room 3 meters by 4 in 1 day and a half, and you can live in the room immediately. And two masons and 4 helpers can build a house in 45 days. But naturally, this has to settle down and to be produced immediately. I mean, to be put up continuously. You have to leave it to settle down for a while. So if you have a group of 10 houses, you can start here, next, and on, and you don't need to build it all at the same time. And you see the ultimate aim of this institute. It is like the companions of the Middle Ages, those builders of the cathedrals. They were anonymous. And they were like the barefooted doctor of China. They didn't ask for money. They were people with, consciousness to produce, to say, to express their feelings. And they are the people who were responsible for these cathedrals that we have. I have a book of one of the companions who was responsible for the church, Abbeyal Church of the Tournai in the south of France. It is marvelous how all the dimensions were ruled and commanded by the harmonic ratios, the musical of the octave and the fourth and the third, because if you hold a string in the middle, you have the octave. And if you take the third and the fourth, because every two waves would be meeting with three. So you have the third or the fourth or the harmonics and the et cetera, et cetera. And because you see, the eye would feel that, because physiologically speaking, the eye doesn't see more than a point at a time. If you have a line, you don't see it instantaneously like we think. It is very quick because the eye sees point after point, sending the experience to the brain like music. You hear note after note, and you make the image in your brain like you make the melody in your brain. Only it is with the sight, it is very quick. We think it is instantaneous. No. So by this, we shall have introduced harmony and musicality. Because if this room, the eye would go harmonically, pam, 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 etc. If the third or the fourth, it would be fantastic. But if it were the second, it will never, no way two waves will meet. You will have dissonance and with jarring, hurting the ear. So here now, this kind of these companions were respecting in this church the musical harmonic proportions. And they told me, I have been nearby, but I promised that I must go and see it like I visited out here, because it's something to be visited. It has musical qualities, the space. So this is what we have to introduce into our modern architecture. And when we have the fourth dimension, the third dimension too, you know, the royal chamber on the Great Pyramid, it is 1 to 2 to the square root of 5 over 4, I don't know what, because the golden ratio. And there is in the Arab houses, there is one of my colleagues, he had now working in the university in Tokyo, he has prepared his doctoral degree, showing that in all these rooms, all the dimensions were commanded by phi or pi, by the golden ratio or pi. So you see these harmonics, because it affects, you have people that will tell you we have the radiations of form, which is true, it's correct. You have the radiations of form which can be beneficent. Like they say about the pyramid that is curing, I don't know what, because the vibrations would help, the body to vibrate in unison and arrange the body, etc., etc. Because if you have a dissonance, if it were sound and you be jerking, but if it is harmonious, you are pleased, or you go in and you feel happy. So this is what I hope that we have to take into our considerations in our modern music, modern architecture, is to reintroduce the human scale, the human reference, because, architecture is the art of building according to the dictionary. Art is a gift by God. If you don't have it, you'll never have it. But technique can be easily learned in school, in university. And that means to say that we have to reintroduce aesthetics and harmonics and this and that, and even music. Because in China, they used to say that the judge, he will not be allowed to be a judge unless he was a musician, because of this harmonics to judge properly. And in architecture, we have to judge space too, but which is closer than the judge of a man hitting another fellow. So you see, to my mind, this is a revolution which we have, and to respect man. And as I said, if we are designing, we have to confess, to know if it were for man or something else. If it's for man, we can discuss. If it were for something else, politics, economics, whatever it is, you can do whatever you like. But we have to reintroduce this element, the human element. And music, say architecture, when you have it repeated mechanically. I say, if you take a film to the knees in a square like the Stadtpark in Vienna, because they have music in the afternoon on Saturday, and you see up to the knees, you would find chaos, legs going to and fro. If you hear a military march going on, you will find all the legs would go 1, 2, 1, 2, the military march. and then he stops, and you hear a Wiener waltz. Here you have rhythm, just rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2, they're going haphazardly. And then you hear a Wiener waltz by Johannes Strauss, and then you have every two female legs coming to two male legs, and they dance 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, waltzing, you know. You have rhythm and pattern. And then this Wiener waltz stops, and you have a waltz by Chopin. This cannot be danced by the common man. He has a ballet dancer, so all the legs will step aside, and you have two legs only, male and female coming, dancing happily. And then the dissonance comes in the music, and they are angry with one another, they go away, and then the dissonance is conciliated, is resolved, and they come back and they dance happier than before. So you have rhythm, pattern, and a human expression, artistic expression, which comes from the ballet dancer. So we have to have our architecture to have to have rhythm, pattern, and artistic expression. Because when you have this rose, as we said, like a broken record, tukum, 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 there is no music, you have rhythm only, but only, even in a military march you have rhythm, but you have melody. But I mean to say, if you have some arrangements of the modern arrangements, patterning of 5, 6 houses in a certain form, and then repeat it here and there, 5, 6 houses here. And this is like the Wiener waltz, but it is not human expression, because when you enter into one, you find it is artistic, it is all right. But when I enter into the other combination of houses, I feel that, oh, it is the same, I don't know where I am. But you have to have, as you are walking, you have variety, unity in variety, not in uniformity. And artistic expression I would like to have, because space, you are modeling, you're playing with space. You have crescendos, you have diminuendos, you have accelerandos, you have to, as you go, as you walk, and space is becoming smaller and larger, and this and that, and you compose it, and the verticality, horizontality, and I don't know what. So if you have to play with that as an architect, I think that would make architecture, would make people, I mean, we shall have less rows and trouble and fights amongst people. They would be loving and respectful of one another, because they are respected. Any questions, please? I would be very glad to. Yes, please.
This relates to building a structure in Egypt versus over here. The first question would be, is the skill level in Egypt for building an Adobe building similar to the skill level for building it in Mars? And the second question would
Let's
be,
begin with the first.
Yes, because I don't hear well is my earphones here. Yes.
Okay. Are the skills in Egypt the same, like those being used in the mosque in Abu Qir? Is that the question? Are they the same skills and the same techniques used in Egypt?
The skills in Egypt, in the major part of the buildings, they are the common buildings in concrete. But these are in Nubia, we have had these masons that you have seen, they have inherited the technique from the old kingdom. We have the examples of this vaults and dome, they go to the 3rd dynasty. And this is limited to these fellows. And when these masons you have out here in Abu Qir were invited to build in this architecture I have showed you with the concrete, they refused. So the technique, unfortunately, we are trying now and I was very happy when I came out here and I found this great interest amongst, our colleagues down here. I will use this interest we have been filming with my friend down here to show my people there that the Americans are more interested and more conscious of the possibilities of solving the problems for the millions. This technique is to be reintroduced, to be brought back. Now it is dying out. We have to catch it before it goes away and to be reintroduced and let it be in Mexico. Please.
Another question.
then the other part to the question is, these two masons that have come from Nubia, is their skill level about the same as somebody's skill level 2,000 years ago? Would you guess it the same?
He's asking if the skills of the two master builders,
Yes,
the masons,
yes.
are they similar to those of the ancients of the old dynasties in Egypt?
The same. This technique is the same because the form is imposed by the stresses, by the forces, and otherwise it will not work. Yes, please. Yes, please.
When you come from Aswan down the Nile, you see on the right side the new villages that were built in the place of the drowned villages. And they are in a new architecture. They look all like they would be in the ground. Are these new villages accepted by the people?
I have to question it a bit. On the right, when you go to Aswan on the right,
So when you go down the Nile from Aswan
yes,
on the right, you have these new villages in the place of the drowned
What did
villages.
he say? Ask me the question. I answer. Don't answer.
A new kind of architecture. Are they accepted by the people who
okay. When you go from Aswan up the Nile,
Yes,
up the Nile, I mean, to Sudan,
to Sudan.
there have been villages next to the Nile, new villages. Are these villages accepted by the people, the new villages that have been built?
Well, you know, these poor devils are brainwashed because they told them this is technology, concrete. And we have had, once we have invited the architects and the engineers of the whole country, whoever has got any idea, to come and build a model on the grounds of the Building Research Center in Cairo. And there were 7 models put up. The two extremes, one was the same model that you have seen out here with the dome and the Iwan, the recess, and the vaulted recess, all in mud brick, all in Adobe. And the other extreme was a prefabricated, ultra-modern, which came with bulldozer, not bulldozers, what you call them, cranes, and coming and dropping them down, and it was built one day, the thing was done. Air temperature. First of all, the people, this was evaluated by people coming from London University because we didn't have the thermometers. And they found out that air temperature and the ultra-modern, the concrete prefabricated model was 17 degrees centigrade higher than the model in Adobe. And I wonder which is the modern. This is anachronistic, and you can measure the anachronism by the evaluated by the kilo. I mean to say the air. I mean difference of at 17 degrees centigrade in April, and in July and August it will be much more. And they first designed. They found out. They tried to find out the comfort zone. It was between 19 degrees centigrade and 24 or 26. I don't remember, but the air temperature inside the Adobe, which is backward, didn't come out of the comfort zone during the 24 hours, and fluctuation 2 degrees centigrade. The outside air temperature was shooting up and down about 30 degrees, or I don't know, 20 degrees, and indoors it was constant fluctuation 2 degrees centigrade. Never did come out of the comfort zone. So this is where we have to have modern science to evaluate, or rather to define what we call modern and what we call contemporary. Contemporary with what? Contemporary with the steel factories or the cement factories, or contemporary with the findings of modern science, the physics and aerodynamics and I don't know what. So you see, this is the problem. And they go and repeat, tuck, 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 tuck. Oh, this is terrible. I say that architecture, I mean to say, as we said, not two men in the world are alike, and if the building is the portrait of the owner, if they were even twins, they will differ in their dreams, and architecture comes out of the dream, not of the physique. So you see, this is how we are dealing. I have had a project, and we have had 400 families to house in Aswan, and I said, I will have 20 architects. I will not let one architect, I can do it, but I will never do it. 20 architects, and every architect would have to design a neighborhood only of 20 families. And he has to inquire and ask each family their desiderata, like when we have a rich man, Monsieur, how many rooms? I want a bedroom, 6 bedrooms, and I want a salon, I want a dining room, and this and that. And I run to my office and draw and break him that, and oh, I don't like this. Yes, yes, Your Highness or Your Excellency, whatever it is. And I go back to my office and come back. And when we design for the poor, we design one house and put 6 zeros and becomes a million. This is not correct, and we should never repeat a house twice, aesthetically. And this we have to do, even if if you don't have time, the job is not ours. Let the people, they will build it. But this would need, like we have seen in Nubia, there were 34,000 houses, not two alike, and each one more beautiful than the other, and comfortable. And what we have done, we kill the children, because they cry, but they don't know. So I think if we do design houses which are not fit, it would be, let us say, if the architect is ignorant of the facts, the scientific facts, it would be an unpremeditated murder. But if he knows the rules and he makes it, it is premeditated murder. Because I mean to say, to raise, if I can reduce, because we are, as I told you, we are in what do you call it, we're working for cooling. But if I can, I mean to say, reduce the temperature, or rather leave it higher, have the temperature higher by 1 degree than I could have, by my materials, by my design, I would be morally responsible. And out here, they had to be for heating, because you have I mean, you're designing for heating. And heating, I was thinking before I came out here, because I didn't know that you have, to say, very hot by the day and very cold by night. And this you can have restored. Here the passive energy is workable. But when I see that, because here the tragedy, or rather the trouble with the energy, the crisis of energy, and the Americans are worried about the energy and so on, with the fuel and so on. And I find that people in my country and other countries where this is not the case, and they are imitating, they are monkeying the Americans. So why should it be like that? And I didn't understand it until I came here and I felt, well, this passive energy for the design for out here. And believe me, mud brick, this Adobe would work beautifully, because it is very bad conductor of heat. Conductivity is 0.3. Cement block is 0.9. If I have 9 calories on top, it will be, or 9, it will, for 1 centimeter, 9.9 would pass through, and only the insulation would be 1 degree. So this is where we are, and it heats up slowly, but doesn't mean that it is insulating, but it heats up slowly, and it cools down slowly too. So that is why what I have seen here, which is very nice, that you have to have your insulation, only you have, and heat up during the day, and insulate your southern wall by having, I mean, waterproofing, and having another wall, etc., like Professor Van, yes, when we were discussing, we had a discussion. And here you have, as I said, if you have the vaulting, the vault would be open towards the, I mean, slightly inclined to the vertical. And if you put glass, fill it with glass, if it were to be facing south, or rather consider the angle of declination and the angle of altitude, and let the sun rays to come in, you can heat your room, I mean, automatically by your, I mean to say, this passive energy, without having to have recourse to have reflectors and collectors and things and metals ruining the outside, I mean to say, the architecture, because we have to be very careful. Architecture, I mean to say, the skyline of the city has been ruined by the aerials of television and so on. Now we have mirrors and collectors and reflectors, and we have to think about the aesthetic effect of what we have to do, and you have to make it to fit in to the modern architecture. Yes, please.
Is it, you are an architect. Are you employed by the university over there?
Are you employed by the university in Egypt?
Am I?
Employed by the university in Egypt.
I have been teaching all my life, but I wasn't responsible until I have been I was responsible, the dean for the Faculty of Architecture in the Beaux-Arts in Cairo. But unfortunately, I had to leave. Before that, I was just, trying, and I was trying to change the education, the material, and the curricula, and so on and so on. But recently, I was employed, at the Azhar University. I told the monsieur, when they asked me to come and talk to the boys, what I will teach will be against all what you are doing. I said, no, we want you just to speak to us. And then I went, and they said in the end that some of the professors objected. They said he's insulting us. But I wasn't, because for one reason, I said that those responsible for the city and the architecture are whom? The architect, the town planner, and the client, and the authorities. And I try to analyze who are they. If you were the architect, is he cultured or a professional? And if he were cultured, is cultured Western or Eastern or whatever it is? And does he have, I try to analyze, and what's the kind of furniture is in his house? And the client too, if he were a peasant coming to the city, if he were this and that and doing that. And that way they thought that I was making fun of the professors, because it might be because we have, the furniture and the interior decoration in my country, even in my family's house, they have the Louis XV and Louis XIV more furniture, and they call it Le Quinze and Le Seize. This is Louis XV and Louis XIV. And this is horrible. And they thought I was making fun of them. But this is the culture alienation, the culture change that is taking place, and instead of, because there are the interchangeables between the cultures and the non-interchangeables between the cultures.
Now, as an architect, did you get fascinated with what the Nubians were doing, and you saw the possibilities of it, and now you're trying to push it out into Egypt, and you're coming over here to do the same thing?
As an architect,
Yes.
you were fascinated by what the Nubians were doing, and you tried to could you give me the word, to generalize it?
No, you see, I am fascinated by the Nubians, but it is not the fascination by the Nubians. I am dealing with the problem of the architecture for the poor, the 900 million, and the technical solution to subject technology to this. And at the same time, as you have seen, this architecture is beautiful automatically with no intent to use expensive material like marble, this and that. This is Adobe and you sculpture. I say, you give a Rodin half a cubic meter of clay, of earth, of mud, and he makes you the thinker, le penseur, radiating energy and costing millions. So this is what we are trying to do. And thanks to God, now my people are started to listen, because they found out that there is an impossibility. There is no government in the whole world can build for the millions, and unless we introduce what we are aiming at with this Institute for Appropriate Technology is to subject science to the economy of the poor, and to find some means of reintroducing the traditional cooperative system to work under the non-traditional situation which is prevailing in our societies nowadays. Because with the snag in cooperation, one man cannot build a house. 10 men can build 10 houses very easily. And then we shall have to train. And the mason that you have out here in Abiq, he trained 46 kids, lending their hands, asking for, begging from the tourists, to become master masons in 3 months' time. They mastered all the operations that go into the building of a house, from the foundations to the roof, to the dome, to the vault. And they found out that a mason is paid now in Egypt £7 a day. If he goes to the Gulf countries, he is paid £20 a day. So it is a great incentive for them to learn. And they taught one another. This 46, I heard that they have recently become 80. So you see, it is only we have to show, like football, as I said. Make them to play with masonry, with things, but give them the opportunity. I was building a house for one of my friends, and came the Austrian ambassador and his son. They took off their jackets and started building. And we have had Our friend Muhammad Ibrahim, who came to build here, was a very important fellow, and he went to build. Building is like sculpture, like modeling. As I say, children go to the beach and build castles of sand. And not to waste our muscles running after a ball. Use our feelings, and build, I think, I don't know, if we teach the people, the students, the trouble is that after we have been the people interested in football, if they be interested in housing, after you have built their houses, what they will do? I am sure that they will destroy their houses and build them again to have the fun of building. Building is an art, it's fantastic.